What is up, everybody? I am HoopsandHipHop, and welcome to another episode of the Pokeblock Podcast. This is officially the very first episode of 2020, which is awesome, so Happy New Year to all of you guys. I hope you had an amazing Christmas, as I said, I think last week was an episode between Christmas and New Year's. I can't remember. Time is going so fast, but either way, hope you guys had an amazing Christmas, an amazing New Year's, and I really hope you guys are looking forward to 2020. Hopefully, you guys have some things you want to accomplish, some resolutions, some goals, and hopefully the year just starts off really good for all of you. I really genuinely hope everyone here listening and just everyone has a great year. As far though as what we're going to be talking about though today, it does have to do with the realm of New Year's and New Year's resolutions and things like that, particularly with Pokemon though, because obviously Pokemon is what we talk about here. I wanted to kind of go into a discussion today on Pokemon's New Year's resolution, or at least what I feel like Game Freak, Pokemon Company, whoever you want to point the finger at, what their New Year's resolution should be. This is what I genuinely feel, and I feel like this is what they genuinely should look to do within this year. And that is basically what we're going to be getting into today. But in order to talk about that, we do have to look one more time at what happened in this last year. Obviously, this last year, I would say if I had to describe basically the events of Pokemon as a franchise that happened in this last year in like one sentence or one phrase, I would say it was a turning point, or it's going to prove to be a turning point, because at the beginning of the year, obviously, Pokemon-wise, everything was hunky-dory. Let's Go had just sold like 1 million copies. I mean, it was a little bit, people were a little bit divided on it because it was a little bit different, but overall, people had fun with it. It sold like a gajillion copies, like everything went really well. And then going into the beginning of this year, things were hunky-dory, things were swell. We knew we were getting a new game and a new generation, and people were really excited for it. And then we got the announcement, I should say, and it came out, it was revealed, everyone was really hyped. And then obviously things continued to be just really good and really fine until June, until E3 came around, and the announcement was made that the National Dex wouldn't be here, and that's kind of when crap started to hit the fan and everything started to fall apart. The wheels started to come off the train, and we started just to kind of have the arguments we've been having ever since, as opposed to just being hyped about Pokemon like we usually are used to. We're not used to having this much contention within Pokemon. We're used to just Pokemon games being really good, everyone being excited, buying them, enjoying them, talking about them, and that's it. Granted, all of those things still did happen once Pokemon Sword and Shield came out. A gajillion people bought them. It's literally the fastest selling Switch game of all time, and I genuinely don't know what could beat it. I would say Zelda and Mario are the only things that have the potential to beat it going forward, or another Pokemon game. And so lots of people bought it, lots of people played it, and lots of people enjoyed it. I would say that not completely, but the actual game coming out itself and people getting to try it out actually quashed a lot of the debate, because while things were still problems were still present, people realized for the most part, yeah, this is a really good game, this is a lot of fun, and the all the criticism and the bad mouthing wasn't all it was cracked up to be. So overall, yeah, it was like, I feel like 2019 in terms of Pokemon had a happy ending in that respect, but like I said, it wasn't that all the criticism and all the negativity and all that stuff just completely went away forever once the games came out. There was still some of that going on just in the weeks after the game coming out, like for the first little bit, and the criticisms obviously were very apparent from that point in June all the way up to the release. So much so that the Pokemon Company themselves actually had to address it formally with a statement from Junichi Masuda. They talked about it, they discussed how important all the Pokemon are to them and things like that, blah, 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 blah. But the point with that is that they heard. Like, there's no doubt, regardless of how much of a happy ending there was to last year, with the sales and the good reviews and things like that, there is no doubt whatsoever that Game Freak, Nintendo, and the Pokemon Company heard the feedback and the criticism from the choice that they made. And that feedback, I would say, coupled with the positivity as well, because I think it is important to take the good with the bad. I don't think it's just the negativity that's going to do what I'm about to talk about for Pokemon in this year, but the good with the bad, the blend of the two that Sword and Shield saw, I think is what ultimately is going to cause 2019 to be a turning point year for Pokemon as a franchise, particularly with Pokemon Sword and Shield. And that is why my New Year's resolution that I believe Pokemon should have for this year, and basically use it as a new standard, I guess you could say, moving forward, is to turn the corner. I think Pokemon as a franchise needs to turn the corner in 2020 and set a new standard for themselves moving forward past 2020. And I'm going to go into what I mean by this, and I'm going to use different analogies and things like that to do it. But basically, in a nutshell, I feel that Pokemon, they have got to up their game. They've got to crank it up a notch. I mean, that's kind of I would say basically that's sort of an obvious sort of thing given the criticisms of Sword and Shield. But it goes a lot deeper than that at the same time, because like I said, there wasn't really, Pokemon Sword and Shield wasn't a badly made game. It was fully enjoyable. It was really well done in a lot of places. And overall, I think I would say it hit the standard of quality that Pokemon is known for. I would genuinely say it hit the standard of quality that Pokemon is known for. The problem is that it hit that standard of quality on a system whose quality ceiling, if you will, is much higher than the other systems that the games have been on in the past. And so the issues or the flaws or the things that can be improved, however you want to word it, with Pokemon as a franchise, those were kind of blown up and magnified because we were on this system that had the capability of doing things that Pokemon wasn't doing, and they decided to still not do them in this game even though they had the capability. So with us kind of taking the transition into more powerful hardware and kind of dipping our toe and officially the Pokemon Company is officially establishing itself, and the Pokemon series, I should say, is officially establishing itself on powerful hardware that is capable of so many other things, and now they've broken ground on that, and they've gotten feedback, particularly the feedback that we got for Sword and Shield. I believe all of that now culminates in a turning point for Pokemon, particularly the main series, to where they need to turn the corner, they need to up the quality, they really just need to get down and dirty and really just focus on putting out a phenomenal game within the next title or two, whatever those future games may be. As far as the analogies, I should say, that I mentioned earlier, I wanted to go ahead and compare the recent timeline of Pokemon to some of Nintendo's other major franchises, because what is going on with Pokemon right now is actually very similar to what went on with Nintendo's two other biggest franchises, Mario and Zelda. Now, Mario and Zelda were used in a lot of comparisons with Pokemon before Sword and Shield's release, because people saw Odyssey as it kind of turning the corner for the Mario series, just kind of trying new things and upping that ambition. And then obviously Zelda did the same for the Zelda series as well. So with these two flagship franchises kind of pushing the boundaries of excellence as their debut game on the Nintendo Switch, many people expected for Pokemon to do the same, especially because it was going to be the very first Pokemon game on a home console. And ultimately, I would say it failed to do that up to the level of Breath of the Wild and Odyssey. It was a great game, very enjoyable, but in terms of that ambition, in terms of just raising the standard, I think Pokemon Sword and Shield fell a bit short of that. However, with that being said, that doesn't mean that Pokemon has failed to do that entirely, because if we look back at the respective timelines and what brought us to Super Mario Odyssey and to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, it's very, very similar to what is going on in the present day with Pokemon Sword and Shield. Because if we look at, say, Zelda, The Legend of Zelda franchise, prior to Breath of the Wild, the last main series game we had, or home console game, I should say, was The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword. Now, Zelda Skyward Sword is actually in a very similar, or was in a very similar circumstance to what Pokemon Sword and Shield is right now. They had different kind of issues and problems, you could say, but they were very similar in that they were divisive in the fan base. And Skyward Sword, I think we're going on 9 years at this point now that we're in 2020, is still a divisive game within the franchise. Some people love the story of it, some people love the music and the characters, while others absolutely can't play the game due to the motion controls and the linearity of it all. It was a very, very it kind of tore the fan base in two, and there were a lot of criticisms coming in about Skyward Sword when it was released, very similar to Pokemon Sword and Shield. And it was those criticisms, along with the gentle nudge of Skyrim being released at the same time as Skyward Sword, but it was those criticisms from Skyward Sword, the linearity of it, the limitedness, the motion controls, etc., etc. It was all of the feedback that came from Skyward Sword, the divisive game in the Zelda franchise, that brought us Breath of the Wild. That was the turning point for Zelda, where their staff was like, okay, we've got to crank it up a notch. We've really got to bust something out that's going to be special, and we've really got to take this feedback and run with it and just go the extra mile. And that's exactly what they did with Breath of the Wild. Same thing happened with Mario Odyssey. The prior home console 3D Mario game prior to Super Mario Odyssey was Super Mario 3D World on the Wii U, and even though it wasn't a Skyward Sword situation per se, many people were disappointed with Super Mario 3D World. Overall, it was a pretty good game. It looked nice, it played well, it's basically like Mario quality in terms of just the enjoyment, and I guess you could say review scores were good and things like that, but many people were disappointed because even though it was a 3D console Mario game, there wasn't that level of exploration, there wasn't that level of depth, there wasn't that level of just openness that you could expect from a 3D Mario game. Games like Super Mario 64, Mario Sunshine, the Galaxy games, it didn't have that, because basically what 3D World was a glorified 2D platformer that had a sort of a pseudo 3D feel. It has the title 3D World in its name. That's literally in its name, but it's not really a 3D game. It's kind of like a glorified 2.5D game. And there were a lot of criticisms about that. So what does Nintendo do in response when criticism about their last game and one of their major franchises comes about? They turned the corner. They once again, much like Zelda, said, okay, we've got to hunker down, we've got to have some ambition here, and we've got to bring Mario back to the king of the video game industry as everyone knows him to be, and they did just that with Odyssey. They took the criticisms about the limited 3D-ness or the limited openness, and they made the most open Mario game ever, arguably, and they did so many things with it to just really push the boundaries and go that extra mile and establish a new standard for 3D Mario. And with Pokemon, this is the exact point in Pokemon's timeline that we're currently at. We're currently at Pokemon is just one step behind Zelda and Mario in terms of their progression and their growth, because right now we are at the point that Zelda was with Skyward Sword and Mario was with 3D World. We're at the divisive game point, which, given how Zelda and Mario responded, and given how Pokemon has had all of this feedback, which is clearly going to be used in one way, shape, or form, and given how those two franchises turned it around for those games and truly brought about something special, to me, in my opinion, I think that bodes extremely well for Pokemon in terms of it being able to do the same thing and bring out another game in the future, whether it might not be the very next game, because Pokemon games tend to come out pretty often, obviously, but within maybe the next couple titles, they bring out a title that just really cranks it up, turns the corner, and just blows everyone away and sets that new standard. I really, truly believe that is what is going to happen, because Pokemon, even though it's not fully owned by Nintendo like Zelda and Mario are, the Pokemon Company is kind of its own thing. It is still a Nintendo property at the same time. Nintendo have a say in it. And obviously, even the non-Nintendo parts of Pokemon, whether it be creatures, whether it be Game Freak, they have a standard of excellence to themselves as well, and so obviously they're naturally going to do what they can to improve, just like Nintendo does. And with Nintendo having that extra say in the development of Pokemon as well, I really think all of this feedback that was received, both positive and negative, is going to really cause them to kind of sit down and say, okay, we got to crank it out. Like, we can no longer just sit on the laurels of the fact we have this extremely successful franchise. We can't rest on the laurels that we're just porting it to a home console and have that be the reason why we can continue to sell units. Like, I don't think they're going to, I think Game Freak genuinely is going to just sit down, they're going to hunker down, and they're going to realize, okay, we've really got to up the level here. We've got to push the pace. We've got to reach a new level of excellence and really do something that's going to blow people away. And I really, truly believe that is what is going to happen within the next couple titles. I would imagine that whatever game it ends up being, whether it's the Diamond and Pearl remakes, whether it's maybe even Generation 9, I don't know. But I think that Pokemon's next major title, or within the next couple of major titles, once again, because they come out a little more frequently, I would say we are definitely going to see that level of ambition, that level of excellence, and them raising the standard thanks to the feedback that we got from Sword and Shield, just because that is what is going on with all of Nintendo's major franchises right now, is a era of progression, an era of turning the corner, and an era of just setting a new standard, and I think Pokemon is going to be no different. You could even argue Fire Emblem did that too. Fire Emblem is sort of one of Nintendo's B-grade franchises as opposed to the A tier, but it kind of did the same thing with, obviously you had Fire Emblem games on the 3DS. It made its return to the home console scene with Fire Emblem Three Houses, and Fire Emblem Three Houses ended up being, it didn't change anything. It wasn't as groundbreaking as Zelda and Mario, you could say, but it did a lot of amazing things and was a really, really good game. So I think Pokemon is definitely on the way to that as well. I just think given where it sits in the video game space and its unique position as being a handheld only franchise and the transitions and everything like that, I feel like it was just a step behind the progression and the evolution of these other two franchises, and now we are reaching the turning point for Pokemon that Zelda and Mario already had. I think the main issue was that people expected, just because this was the first game on the Switch, and I would say rightfully so, because there was a big opportunity to make the first game on Switch just this huge giant thing, but I felt people were kind of pushing. In hindsight, I felt like they were pushing Pokemon ahead of their own curve a little bit too fast, whereas they needed a little bit more time. They needed this experience with Sword and Shield to turn the corner and then eventually make this beautiful, amazing game that's going to propel Pokemon into the stratosphere. It's going to make Pokemon on a home console what it should be, and it's going to do all this other stuff. I really I mean, obviously, I can't say this is definitely going to happen, but if I know Nintendo, and I know Game Freak, and I know Junichi Masuda, if I know all of those people the way I think I know them and the way I have come to trust them over the years and why they are my favorite video game company of all time, I have faith in them that they are going to get the job done there. Like, I fully trust that that is going to be the case. Nintendo and Game Freak, they've never really let me down too much, and in this situation, I definitely trust that they know what they're doing. I trust that they care about the franchise, obviously. I trust that they recognize what needs to be done, and I think they're going to go out there and do it. I really, really, truly do. I can't say for sure, so this is kind of just like a glorified hope, but like I said, this is the New Year's resolution that Pokemon as a franchise and everyone involved in it, Nintendo, Game Freak, etc., this is the resolution and the goal that they need to have for Pokemon in 2020. Whatever game they're working on right now, whatever projects they've got coming up, they need to sit down and say, okay, Pokemon Sword and Shield happened. It was a thing. Here's what we learned. We're now going to crank it into overdrive and put out something that's going to knock people's socks off. It might take a couple of years. It might take delays. It might take not having a game in any given year, but we're going to do it because that's what needs to be done for the franchise. It deserves this. We need to give it to the fans because they care, and they obviously made their voices heard on what they didn't like about the last title. So that's absolutely what they need to do, bar none. And I genuinely feel like that is what they will do. If Nintendo has proved one thing, if they've proved two things, in fact, over the past, basically their whole history, is that A, they know how to make quality games, and B, they know how to accept feedback and turn it into something positive. The whole Wii U era transforming into the Switch era is an absolute just perfect example of this, where they were still holding on to the whole casual scene and kind of still holding on to gimmicks and motion controls, and the sales showed that that is not what the people wanted. People also criticized with their voices and their opinions as well, saying we don't want these more casual experiences, we need hardcore single player, just monumental experiences. And what did we get? We got the Switch that has a more standard way of playing video games. It's got a standard controller. We got these hardcore experiences with Mario Odyssey, Zelda. We got tons of like first party titles. There's a steady stream of those as opposed onto the Wii U where it was a drought. They took all of that and they learned from it into the Switch, and that's why the Switch is thriving. And I just think that kind of like thought process, that kind of learning experience absolutely will parallel with Pokemon right now as well, because Pokemon is going through the same thing. Like it's going through its growing pains that other Nintendo franchises and Nintendo itself have previously gone through, and every single one of them have came out on top, and they've came out on top in a big way by learning from their mistakes and putting out a home run of a game afterwards. And I think Pokemon's going to do the exact same thing. The wild card there, the one wild card is obviously there's more people that have a say in what's going on with Pokemon than just Nintendo, because once again, Game Freak creatures are a part of it, but Game Freak are no slouches. Game Freak, they're a quality video game company, obviously. They know what they're doing, obviously, and they are committed to quality, I would say, just as much as Nintendo is. And because they have that access to the Nintendo magic and the Nintendo like way of doing things, because Pokemon owns a stake in the company, the Pokemon company that is, I believe that is where they will be able to thrive the most and really be able to take advantage of that asset that they have, and that's what's ultimately really going to make the difference. So all in all, 2020 is going to be a major year of growth for Nintendo, or not Nintendo. It's going to be a major year of growth for Pokemon, the Pokemon Company, the main series games. It's going to be a year of reflection. I think from November to now, they've had 2 months to kind of sit and look at the reactions and be like, okay, we're done with Sword and Shield. We can take a breather. We can kind of take a break and get our wits about us again. We can listen to what people are saying. And now, okay, let's get back to business. Let's get back to working on the next thing. And now because we have heard the concerns of fans, we are really going to take that to heart and make something special throughout this year with our next title or our next couple titles, whatever it may be. I really, truly feel that Pokemon will take that to heart, and we are going to see Pokemon turn the corner and elevate itself and establish a new standard, just like Nintendo and some of its other amazing, great, huge franchises have done. But with all that being said, that is going to wrap it up for me. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I thought it was an interesting one to talk about because obviously the future of Pokemon is very interesting. Kind of been talking about it in different ways in the past couple episodes, and I'm really excited to see what Pokemon does in terms of just like their next games and kind of just improving from here, because Pokemon Sword and Shield, for all it could improve on, was really great at the same time, and I think if it just does those couple little things, it's going to be amazing. So once again, thank you for listening. I'll be back next Friday with another episode. You can check me out on my YouTube channel, Hoops and Hip Hop, for tons of Pokemon content of all kinds if you haven't yet already. And with all that being said, wherever you're listening, wherever you're watching, thank you so much. We'll see you next Friday. And until then, as always, I will smell you guys later.